essentially over the years we've been concerned with looking at the relationship between context, firm finance, and what happens within the organisation and outcomes. I think there's been a tendency in the 90s to see the firm as very much a transmission belt, where essentially it was just about generating shareholder value, and you didn't have to worry too much about internal organisational processes or capabilities as long as the short-term outcome was optimal. We very much have calling for a return to, shall we say, almost the 1950s view of the firm as an entity which builds up incrementally capabilities over many years, and that these capabilities are vulnerable to disruption. And indeed, that radical disruption can actually make the firm less good, even if you try and align it to optimizing shareholder value. In doing so, over the medium term, you might actually make it less capable of generating shareholder value. First of all, we obviously like to emphasize the parameters. There's been a tendency in both proponents and critics of the private equity industry to conflate very different kinds of investor, as it were. Because essentially, there's obviously you need to draw a distinction from venture capital for startups, which everybody would agree is a good thing, prima facie. Management buyouts that may take a firm private, okay, but when you have existing management team involved, you do have actually quite different dynamics. Why? Because managers and insiders can more accurately cost the worth of a firm's human assets, and in doing so will take a more measured view. As an outsider, it's easy to cost certain things like physical assets. It's very difficult to accurately cost a firm's human capabilities, and as a result, they tend to be invariably undervalued. And so what we looked at primarily was IBOs, institutional buyouts, where new managerial teams are installed. What did we find? Well, effectively, over a 5-year period, organizational performance worsened, and with that, employment and productivity. So it seems, quite simply, both an organization's people and indeed, ultimately, those seeking financial returns from an organization over a 5-year period were worse, not better. Well, I think the 2 points. First of all, we're looking at primarily at IBOs. With MBOs, we know the effects of excessive leverage aren't necessarily quite so detrimental. However, essentially, excessive leverage is ultimately quite a problematic process, because ultimately you lose sight of a business and you simply see it more in terms of a debt vehicle. I mean, this is quite interesting, of course, because you look at the decline of UK high street. Everybody blames Amazon or whatever. I mean, one of the big problems has been that high street property has been seen as sort of, primarily as a debt vehicle, rather than a place to buy and sell things.
So it doesn't give the retailers a chance?
No, exactly. Right. And what's interesting, if you look at someone like Debenhams, essentially they went through the whole IBO process, ended up with excessive debt, and now they face the challenge of trying to run it again as an orthodox business. But the danger with debt leverage is not obviously that being overborrowed is never a good thing, but also you lose sight of the fundamentals of what you're trying to do.